everybody, happy Monday night. Today is July 17th, 2023. This is Across the Pitch. I am Mike Barrera. I'm also joined by my fellow co-host, Dave Miller, as well as Jose Nunez. Jose is also joined by our fourth co-host tonight, his puppy that is going in and out. So bear with us as we transition through. This is real life, everybody. This is what happens with people on a day-to-day with our live shows. But Dave, I'll shoot to you first in England. How you doing tonight, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's always good to jump on the podcast. Yeah, especially after a week when the Union have won 2 games out of 2, perhaps especially on the road against a tough Nashville team. It was a great week for the Union, and of course, made even sweeter with the news last week of a certain contract extension. So, looking forward to really delve into what has been a big week and a unique week coming up. With the All-Star break and a hype over a couple of, just a couple of random players. No one important.
No one important. Yeah, I didn't even catch the news yesterday. Dave, before I shoot to Jose, I want to put some comments up. Adam, first all says, "What's up, guys?" Adam, thank you again for joining us. Valerie, who we saw on Saturday. Hello, Valerie. Thanks for joining us again. And Eric as well. He said 6 points or bust this week, which I completely agree with. And Derek, again, hey guys, good to see you. You as well, Derek. Appreciate your posts every single week. For myself, Dave, I haven't been in front of the camera since late June because I was off 4th of July weekend. And last week we had the no show, so it's been nice to get back on camera. But Jose, I see you're back with us now.
I am, and
how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I apologize to anybody listening. My wife came down with COVID just yesterday evening, and it seems like it's progressing pretty fast. So it's her temperature is already going back to normal. It must be one of the easier strains out of everything that we've experienced over the last 3 years at this point, almost 4 years. But I'm doing well. Very excited to have seen Val and Eric at the stadium. And I must admit, on a personal note, just super touched by the great feedback that I've been getting. I think all of us from that little video I put out. So honestly, I could not have been more pleased with the results of that. And I must be honest with you, that took, I don't know, like 30 minutes worth of work tops. So it was wonderful. So we're all good. Excited to be here, and hopefully, we continue this nice streak going into Leagues Cup.
Absolutely. And speaking of, if people haven't caught it yet, Jose was able to ask Jose Martinez a couple questions regarding just the team's recent form and how he's feeling right now. And I know for most of the media, actually all the media, are non-Spanish speaking reporters. I'm the only one who really speaks Spanish, and even myself, my Spanish is it's okay, it's manageable. But Jose,
what do they call you, Mike? A no sabo kid?
Yeah, exactly. So, I can understand it. As you can see, I'm wearing my Mexican national jersey because they just won the Gold Cup last night. So little clap for myself there. I can't really wear this jersey anywhere because all of our followers are U.S. national fans and they all hate Mexican fans. So I'm wearing it tonight. Whatever. Let me have my moment here. But no, Jose is completely fluent in Spanish, and I was able to speak with Jose. And again, it just adds some new content to our repertoire here, and hopefully more to come as hopefully Martinez scores more goals and we get more interviews with him each and every single week. But again, the reason why this episode is named 6 points is because the Union secured 6 points this past week. They had the surprising victory against Nashville, as well as the pretty solid win against NYCFC. So Dave, I'll shoot to you first. What were your thoughts on the Nashville match?
I mean, a big win, right? I mean, we could sit here and say, the Union got lucky, which I think on another day, perhaps another couple of those shots end up in the back of the net. But it's the luck that perhaps they haven't had in the last few weeks. I mean, of course, it was 2 penalties from Daniel Gazdag that really got us to win. But I thought the most positive thing was just how brave the team looks going forward, being willing to take shots from distance, try and test the goalkeeper. And of course, Quinn Sullivan came close, hit the post and forced another save. I think Gazdag tried his luck a couple of times, and it keeps the opposition on their toes a bit. So not expecting you to, perhaps they might back off a bit more, or they might end up pushing up a bit more forward, and trying to close down the shot, which opens up more space in and around the vicinity. But I mean, yeah, it was massive, to come out of Nashville with 3 points. We've now leapfrogged them into third place, which is big in terms of the playoffs and how things will go there. Union will play at least one home game as it stands.
Yeah.
Who knows how the rest of the season will pan out? But I think that win could be, as we sort of said, like we needed a win to somewhat steady the season, but also try and launch the season as we go into the second half.
I mean, we talked about it as a whole. I mean, weeks ago. This isn't even just recently. We've said to ourselves, if we can get a point in Nashville, how huge would that be? Now, a little bit of luck played our way against Nashville there for sure, but it's still, in the grand scheme of things, however way you got it was a huge win. Jose, what were your thoughts on the Nashville outcome?
I think I want to first and foremost congratulate all the fans that went. I think a good bit of the 140 guys traveled and had a fun time out in Nashville. So I want to congratulate them for they're able to, right? They might be in different situations in their lives right now that they're able to just disappear for, a trip to Nashville. So there's that, and completely jealous of that. But overall, man, what a performance. It was obvious that the conversation in the locker room before the game must have been something strong, right? Especially after two very tough losses from Atlanta and LA Galaxy. So the conversation must have been just very, very strong. And as Jim mentioned in the post-match conference, it crept into his mind. I do not want to have a 3-game losing streak, and it's something that we haven't experienced in a very, very long time. So to get away from that was awesome, and the team was almost unrecognizable in the way that they approached the game. That I sort of felt like, shit, if this would have happened in Atlanta or certainly Los Angeles, like this is a team that could have walked away with all 9 points. Honestly, just how different they played and how well they played. Now, granted, Kai's back. We had the surprise performance from Quinn Sullivan. So overall, I think we were happy with the pleasant surprises. But overall, I think we were all pretty pessimistic going into that game. That I think we would have been fine with a point. But to walk away with 3 from Geodis Park is awesome. So I'm just still smiling about that game.
And you mentioned just how the pessimistic approach. I mean, Eric makes a joke here, fantastic goalkeeper. You mean Bendik with a shutout. If anyone would have guessed for Bendik to have a shutout, it certainly wasn't going to be against Nashville. And then Derek also comments about the Jose Martinez goal, which we'll get to in a bit, about what a great goal that was from Quinn Sullivan. But, to Jose's point, I felt like against Atlanta and against LA, it just seemed like they overthought the formation, overthought the lineup. Even I think Jim kind of alluded to that as well against Atlanta. I think we might have overthought this. And there's the puppy. On camera. See, now usually I have Milo on camera, my cat. So Jose's got his dog with him today. But it certainly was a braver approach. And if you listen to the press conferences from time and time again, Jim Curtin has preached being braver in attack. And I think we saw Quinn Sullivan finally doing that. And I know, Dave, the three of us joke around about how much I love Sullivan. But he did look a lot sharper. He did look a lot braver. I mean, if you kind of look at the Leagues Cup as a pause in the MLS and maybe, I guess, halfway point, what are your optimistic thoughts or pessimistic thoughts on Quinn Sullivan after these last couple games that you've seen?
Well, I mean, I think you got to be more positive. I think 'cause he's had a positive influence in back-to-back games now. I think, his willingness to get on the ball, as you sort of said, being brave, willing to take shots on, being in the position to, not just taking the ball forward, but being in the right areas at the right time, whether it's, if Carranza could pass the ball better, Quinn probably would have scored in that first half. But yeah, I think he had a really good game, and again, he had a really good game against at the weekend against NYCFC with that massive assist. But just another shout out to Jesus Bueno, who obviously came into that Martinez role. And of course, Mike, I think I messaged you before the game. I think my prediction, I had the Union to win and Jose Martinez to score. Mm-hmm. I was just a game off, unfortunately, with that one. But I think Bueno stepped in and he just looked so comfortable. It didn't, as great as Jose Martinez is, it didn't really feel like he was missing out the lineup, which is probably the best sort of compliment you could give a player, in that sort of position. Since Jose Martinez is the best 6 in the league, the fact that Bueno went in, it was just a seamless sort of transition, and it was almost as if, Jose was playing. I mean, Bueno was calm, he was composing the ball, he got stuck in. I thought he was brilliant, and I think he played very well when he came on in the first half against NYCFC, and I think at the moment Andres Pereira is, and as excited we were for him, at the moment I'd much rather have Jesus Bueno playing the way he is in the team over Pereira.
It's weird to say that because I think before the season started, none of us thought that Bueno would be as involved as he is. But for those of you who also missed the note, Alejandro Bedoya did have a quad injury. in the first like 20 minutes of the match against NYCFC. After the match, Jim Curtin had suggested it could be a re-aggravation of the same quad injury we saw earlier, which really, I mean, is just unfortunate for Alejandro. But at the same time, at least you have Leagues Cup now. You can take a long extended pause. I don't expect him to see any minutes in this tournament, especially with how well Bueno's playing. But if you guys also follow Todd Lewis from the Free Kick, he put out a video after the Nashville match just highlighting Jesus Bueno, not only highlighting his moments right before the first goal, but also just playing off the ball beforehand, going and shaking Hani Mukhtar, essentially fell asleep a bit on the defensive side of things, and just gaining control, not ripping a shot from outside the box, finding Kai Wagner. Just, again, Dave, kind of piggybacking off what you said, just being more composed on the ball. And for somebody who really hasn't had a lot of minutes, and for somebody who is still fairly young, he's only about 23, 24 years old. So he's not exactly, this 28-year-old, 29-year-old veteran. So,
Yeah.
again, I think also Danny Higginbottom, I believe, mentioned on the commentary as well, you really didn't, have to talk about Bueno, which in a way is a great thing because he just did his job and he went in and out. And so I'm very excited to see the progression of Bueno. Listen, that midfield is getting very crowded now in terms of you have McGlynn playing extremely well. You have Flock, playing fine at times. And now, again, Bueno's kind of stepping the role. Now, we got a couple comments rolling in, so I'll read these comments for us real fast. Derek mentions a post from Quinn Sullivan, how he just rang the post there. And he says, isn't Bueno getting stronger? I completely agree with that. I think the more minutes he gets, the more confident he is every single game. It definitely is Jose Martinez-esque. And then Eric says, this is Curtin we're talking about. Bedoya is going to play every minute, and you know it. Ooh, I still won't see more than 70. I love Eric's consistency because he knows how Curtin rolls. And I do hope that Bedoya is rested because there really is no need to bring him on right now for the foreseeable future. But anyway, Dave, in terms of the second goal that we saw against Nashville, we had the second PK for Gaza. Can you walk us through the second goal and what you thought of the play leading up to that moment?
I think obviously just to quickly go back to the first one as well. I think obviously there was I don't think I've ever seen a clearer penalty in my life. It was just such a clear pushing him back. I think Gazdag's lucky that like you look at the force that he was pushed and sort of the way that he did sort of crash to the ground. He's very lucky that he didn't go head first into the post there, which could have really caused some serious issues in that game. So again, we're very, very fortunate the fact that Gazdag was landed where he was at the position he was to be inches just wide of the post, fortunately. But the second goal was a very good link-up play, and again, I always praise, even if Mikelua and Carranza don't score, I always praise them for being involved in the game, where it's getting an assist or winning a foul that leads to a goal. And again, Mikelua on a foul led to a goal. Some good passage of play from the Union, used his strength and power to get beyond. I think it was Loritz. So Lovitz, who got sent off his second yellow card, hacks him down, and it was again another penalty clear as day. And of course, the Nashville fans, the Gazdag penalty. I think Dan Higginbottom sort of alluded to it, how tough it is, to take a penalty earlier in the game than take another one. And Gazdag kept us cool, and the ball's in the back of the net before the goalkeeper had even moved. I think it was a great penalty, and then of course we'll ignore what the Nashville fans did afterwards, because how the Philadelphia-based fans do disgusting things like that.
So, for those of you who missed the game, if after Gazdag scores the second PK, which was done excellent. In excellent form, they just start throwing, water bottles or cups, whatever. And if this happened in Philadelphia, you'd see us across the entire nation's media.
Easily.
Philadelphia are dirtball fans, and blah blah blah. But nothing got said about Nashville. But Jose, what were your thoughts on the fouls or anything else from the Nashville? Those two goals from Gazdag.
I was uneasy at first about the first Lovitz push, the one on Gazdag, correct? So I have a soft spot for him because he's a PA native. So, gosh, I would love to see him come to the Union in some way, shape, or form in the future. But obviously, we're doing A-OK with our left and our right back. So, that aside, it's tough. I've been in situations like that of having to score a penalty twice in one game, and it absolutely isn't easy because you sort of play your card the first time not knowing that you're going to have to play another card the second time, and 90% of the time you end up going to the same spot because that's what's, muscular memory, where you just know how your body is every single time that you hit it, and you hit it on the spot. So I don't know. I'm excited to, again, talk more about the New York game coming up, but we cannot stop emphasizing just how big this performance was, especially being a few men down as we move into the Leagues Cup. And I know we had a friendly conversation in the press room leading into the post-match press conference for the New York match, but we're getting here to having to make some maybe decisions onto what is the competition that we're really going to focus on now that CONCACAF is gone, and also the U.S. Open Cup. So it'll be intriguing to see what Jim does for the Leagues Cup, especially since he's talked to all of us about this is something they're going to take very seriously, I think, is the line he keeps on dropping to us, which I don't know if that's like PR training that they want him to say, or just how he actually feels. It's hard for me to tell, but just gosh, I cannot be any happier for that result out in Nashville.
Absolutely. So we got a couple more comments here I'll throw in there. So Eric mentions Nashville almost were the most trash fans, but we play NYCFC, who of course are just the cream of the crop of fans that we cannot tolerate. And Derek says he means the post as the honor mention for the clean sheet, which is true. Nashville should have scored at least 3 or 4 times that game, and I'm surprised they didn't. So you're right, Derek. A little bit of luck. Maybe Bendix said a different prayer that day. I have no idea. But the fact that they didn't score a single goal was absolutely astonishing. Again, valid comments on the second penalty. Derek said his son also played with Lovitz as well. And then one question we have here regarding Leagues Cup, and again, this is kind of brings up what Dave and I had talked about just a few minutes ago, but Leagues Cup and Andres Pereira, is this when he finally gets his time? We did see Andres playing against the South American and the other, non-MLS clubs in the CONCACAF. So maybe Andres is better suited for that type of competition. I'm not sure. Dave, do you think Andres gets a little bit more time there?
I think you'd like to think so, but obviously Jim is very much kept the same precedent that they are going to try and win the Leagues Cup. I think it's a great opportunity. And I was listening to obviously the broadcast on Saturday, and they was from the sounds of it, because the Union are basically at the second seed, unless they play LAFC in the final. They essentially play every game at home after the group stage. Presumably they win the group, I think. So it sounds like the Union have a great opportunity to really progress far in the competition. I think, again, it's another way of getting into this, getting into the reformed CONCACAF Champions League, or whatever it is, Champions Cup next year, or the hell they've rebranded it to.
The CONCACAF, the Cup. The next year is the Cup now. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. I think Jim obviously will take it seriously, but I think it's a good opportunity to get a look at a couple of players, but perhaps have a look at a formation, a couple of different formations, maybe, I'd be disappointed to see if Andres Pereira doesn't play. But again, I think it'll also be disappointing, if in the next month or so we don't see a signing or two, especially even if it's just, an MLS experienced striker. It doesn't have to be a world, but it doesn't have to be, the name of I'm trying to think of a MLS, like a Mukhtar player like that. Even if it's a player of the standard of Corey Book, that, when he comes on, he can produce. And of course, who knows, maybe Chris Donovan, maybe that goal from Chris Donovan over the weekend might have,
Dave, you're asking for us, and the way you're describing and tiptoeing around it, you're basically asking us to sign a Shavilko.
Is he available?
I'm gonna go ahead and guess that he is considered. I don't think things have gone very well for him in Chicago. I don't think it's what he expected.
But that's why they should have gone after Kamara, and which a lot of people wanted. I mean, even though he is older, I think they've mentioned some locker room stuff. I mean, look, you see his impact on Chicago. It's obviously that he can still play. I would take Kamara in a heartbeat. But then again, we haven't seen Quinn for a lot because of international duty. Chris Solomon obviously is still a work in progress. So this past week gave me a little bit of hope. I think our third striker finally made their impact on the match. We saw what Quinn Sullivan could do. I mean, he had a few great shots against Nashville, but if you want to kind of segue into NYCFC, he does put a great assist for Jose Martinez. So we see production from our third strikers, especially against New York City. Jose, go ahead.
Yeah, before we move on to New York, though, I think I want to pinpoint and sort of lift up the conversation that finally came out that Jim had with Roger Bennett from Benson Blazers. It just posted today about noon, and it was filmed the morning of or the afternoon of the LA Galaxy match, where Jim was very clear. He has made mistakes in the past, and he has sort of corrected himself, and he's been very grateful to the owners giving him the slack, right? To give him the opportunity to fail and learn from it, which is not something that happens often in this sport, but especially in in soccer specifically, let alone in Europe, which Dave, you and I know all about that when you think about the Chelseas of the world and the carousel of managers they've had over the years.
Yeah.
But even within that conversation, he was very open to say, I know that fans are often interested in bringing flashy names or interested in seeing $5-6 million players coming to teams like ours. But in reality, when we have players like Quinn and the Paxton brothers, Mackenzie, Trusty, they all excel at what they do. They all, you got to train them and coach them differently. And there's a certain bond when they're on the field that it's irreplaceable since they've known each other since grade school. So to bring and I think he used, whether it was purposely or an accident, a Zlatan character into the fold, that can just really sour things really, really quickly. So just wanted to sort of lift up that conversation, a quick 20-minute listen. Jim does most of the talking. Roger Bennett gets maybe 4 or 5 questions, and that's a wrap. So if you want to hear more about Jim or from Jim about his approach to developing the youth, I strongly recommend it. A really, really easy listen while you're working.
Yeah.
And also, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
So I was just going to jumping onto the youth sort of aspect of things. I think that was probably the most disappointing part of perhaps sending Brandon Craig out on loan when they did. I feel like, obviously, with the League's Cup coming up, this is a perfect opportunity for Brandon Craig to potentially get some minutes and play. And I would be upset. I mean, especially in the League's Cup, no disrespect to the competition. I would quite like to see them perhaps give a player like Nelson Pierre a chance, even off the bench for 20 minutes in the game, or no disrespect to the opposition that will be playing over the next couple of games. You'd have to 2-0, 3-0 up against.
How about Raffanella?
I was going to say Raffanella.
Go ahead.
What's that, Raffanella? Do you know what I mean? Even Nelson Pierre, Raffanella, give them some minutes. Why not? What's it going to hurt? I mean, do you know what I mean? As opposed to, keeping Ali Bedoya on for another 30 minutes. He doesn't need to play
another 6 games.
Yeah.
So Eric mentions a point here. It says the homegrowns are great, but they're not going to take us over the top. And then also Derek, and I want to touch on something that Eric mentions there as well. But before I get to that, Derek says, could this tournament eventually rival March Madness because of the global pull of Apple TV, Messi, and preseason and many other clubs around the world? So that is an interesting point that Derek brings up, because I have seen the bracket going around online about, because it is a single game, knockout competition, very much like March Madness. Maybe not right away. I'm sure Messi's going to pull a ton of views alone, but it certainly has the ability to be a very exciting competition against teams that don't play each other very often. So I am very excited to see that. I'm probably going to fill out a bracket myself just for the hell of it to do that. But to Eric's point, rather, so in the press conference, I think it was against LA, Jim Curtin mentions how there is no player like, Mukhtar on the Union who can take over a game single-handedly. All 11 players have to play at a high level, otherwise the team struggles. In a lot of ways, it's great because you have unselfish team ball across the board. At the same time, if you have a couple players playing slightly under average, which we've seen at times throughout the Union's history, then the team really just doesn't have that person to take him to the next level. Dave, and I think you mentioned it also in the chat, how Gazdag might be the closest to that we have, but even he doesn't necessarily take over a game the same way someone like Ricky Puig was or Mukhtar. So I mean,
great pronunciation, Mike. By the way, that was perfect Catalan. I'm not even kidding. That was very, very good.
I do that. I do what I can. I pay attention to Danny Higginbottom, all the best out there, But I think the problem is it puts so much pressure on every single player to play at a high level that you do sometimes just need a superstar. I mean, you really do. I mean, Dave, do you think it'd be disappointed they don't bring anybody in at all this transfer market?
I think yes, because there's definitely glaring needs in this team. I think, of course, Yakud Torres was a player that everyone, ourselves included, was excited about. We thought perhaps he could be that X factor, a guy that, as you sort of said, of course, Gazdag last season especially, and perhaps not so much this year, but was that the key guy. He was he was that guy on the team. There isn't really a player this season that I'd look at and I think, okay, if we need something here, we can rely upon this guy. Again, Carranza is a great player, but I think again he can go missing games, especially. I mean, we saw it in the 2 defeats prior to the Nashville game. But it's just, again, you need a player even if I think we mentioned names like Fafa Picault, someone who can come on and just.
I miss Fafa.
Not even has to be a game changer at the point that, you know, something, if you can give him the ball and he can get you from point A to point B and just try and change the game a bit, you know, put the opposition on their toes a bit. Because I think, again, like, of course, McCullough was a fast striker, but again, like, defending, there was just not that player with the X factor. You know, he can get on the ball, take on a man or two, you know, put players in their toes. I mean, because the Union relies so heavily on the fullbacks.
Yeah. And
we've seen it before. Once Kai Wagner goes out and perhaps Abbazo doesn't get as much joy down the right as he does, everything goes to crap. And I think, you know, we rely so heavily on wing play and getting the ball in the box, and sometimes it just doesn't work, especially when, you know, teams start to compact the penalty area. So like, okay, we know they're going to use their fullbacks. Their wide midfielders aren't going to do anything. It's going to be their fullbacks. So try and compact the penalty area, as we saw, and especially it doesn't help when Jim takes off one of his strikers and replaces him with no disrespect to Quinn Sullivan, but a much smaller player who likes to perhaps play on the edge of the penalty area as opposed to inside towards the 6-yard box trying to do the mucky stuff, trying to win a header.
I guess that's a good segue for a player who stood out to, I think, all three of us against NYCFC. But how about Jack McGlynn? I know, Jose, I think you had kind of highlighted some of him in our conversation. What do you think of McGlynn's performance against New York City? Because really, I thought he was very important to how the team flowed for the 90 minutes.
He was, yes, you're right. I was absolutely smitten by his performance. When I was watching in the stadium in 140, shout out to Eric. Eric was actually able to sell me one of his tickets so I could bring one of the 4 people I brought along to the game. But when we talk about performances that don't show up on the stat sheet, whether it's a goal or assist, etc., I think Jack typically fills a lot of those performances where his spacing was great, his stepping into the ball and just eating up space or blocking passing lanes was just spectacular, to the point that, you know, I know we often don't get to ask a ton of questions at press conferences, though that seems to be changing a little bit as we continue to maybe develop our brand and notoriety and among the press pool. But I was able to ask Jim about it, and he was also in agreement that Jack had an incredible game, one that you won't often see highlighted because it's not the sexy stat that you would see, right? It wasn't a goal, it wasn't an assist, but rather someone who was just out there grinding for the entirety of his time on the field. So I was very impressed with him, and he just continues to evolve, right? We've seen him put some incredible passes together. We've seen him take some incredible shots and even score, and even more so with his passing and his left foot that, again, in that conversation with Roger Bennett, Jim highlights. We've seen him really develop into a better player. So I'm excited to, and I think this Leagues Cup launching pad that we're obviously going to move on to that conversation, but the New York game was probably really a good launching pad for him to string together some good performances as we face 2 international teams here in quick succession.
Agreed. And I know I was reached out on Twitter by somebody. I'm not really sure that the Twitter handle at the point. They said, why isn't McGlynn playing more of a flock? And these are games that you kind of highlight. Say this is the argument to say, why isn't McGlynn playing every single week, starting every single week? Because he is so good. I know Jim had also kind of highlighted in the press conference how even though Bueno and Martinez were obviously playing further back and McGlynn typically plays higher up, there were times when Bueno and McGlynn would actually rotate, where McGlynn was almost playing further out the back, a la, Harris Medunian from years ago. So, again, he just offers a new level of creativity, and he is still so young. So I hope the Leagues Cup is a place where he can start regularly and he can perform at high level regularly, especially against teams like we're playing Tijuana and Querétaro, right, in the first 2 rounds.
Querétaro, I think it's called.
Whatever, however you want to pronounce it. I hopefully he sees more time there and becomes a regular. Go ahead, take it.
Yeah.
Your thoughts. Let's segue with that one into the Chris Donovan goal, because I know that's your favorite player on the Union. So I want to hear your thoughts on the Chris Donovan goal, and then we'll segue to Leagues Cup after that.
Goal of the season. No, I think it was great to see Chris score. Of course, I mean, he was in the right place at the right time. He applied the right pressure. I'm not going to say he forced a mistake from the goalkeeper, but I mean, he was in the right place. He chased down the loose ball. He anticipated the mistake and he capitalised on it and scored. It was good to see. And, hopefully that can perhaps help him kick on a bit and maybe, get something going for him now. Because, of course, he scored a good goal against Minnesota in the Open Cup. I'm hoping, I'm optimistic that hopefully he can he could potentially kick on and hopefully, I know obviously we haven't got high expectations for him, but perhaps he can kick on and become that third striker for the team. That we can rely on, because I sort of view, I know as great as Quinn Sullivan is, I think I'm also rating very highly. I'm not too sure if he is more of an out-and-out striker as opposed to perhaps like a 10 or a second striker or like a false 9, which he sort of has played in the last couple of games. He's dropped off a lot more. He's played a bit more behind the striker, which I found quite interesting to see as well. But even somewhat going a bit of like a lone striker on their own, as Carranza was done, and as Ua did a bit on against someone CFC. So I think, I'm hoping Chris Donovan can kick on it.
So here's a question from Derek. Do you think McGlynn and Sullivan flow well together? And I think I mentioned in one of the recent matches, and thanks, Derek, for the question, why not put McGlynn on the left and Quinn Sullivan on the right, where Bedoya would be, if you went for the diamond? We really haven't seen that this year that I can remember. Maybe if somebody's out there that can correct me on that. I would like to see that. I do think that Quinn, although he has some speed, he doesn't have the same level of speed as Ua, who can just break away against the back line and kind of just do that. Do you think, Dave, just from watching the two of them together, if you put them both in the midfield, do you think that would help or benefit the strikers in a more productive way?
I think it depends what formation you play. So I think, because also I think Gazdag is quite an important, important cog to, to the way the Union play. I think just sort of see his movement on the ball, off the ball, just the way he does try and create space, not just for himself but for his teammates. And that would be quite, as we sort of saw, Quinn put in a great cross, and I would quite like to think, we sort of see perhaps again might help. Perhaps then link the time they've spent together in the academy in the US under 20 system. Perhaps they might have a good connection. It might help them link up more. Maybe Quinn play on the left and have Jack McGlynn playing as like a left side centre midfield, like a 4-2-3-1 maybe.
We really have seen Quinn improve with his crossing game. We saw that earlier in the year when he's playing the left side too. He's actually very strong with crossing the ball with both of his feet. And I do think he's more suited for the outside compared to the inside. But again, I think that the Leagues Cup, whether it be Pereira or Sullivan or McGlynn, this is the time for them to not only get their minutes up, but to just kind of get more of a gel for what they can do every single week and hopefully earn that. Where when it comes to, hey, you got 2 matches against Red Bull and Cincinnati in September. You're going to need them to be able to be playing at a high level and step up and just transition, because that's what we didn't see from Brandon Craig. Jim never gave Craig the opportunity to play with the first team ever. So if he were to be thrust in that position, we don't know what he was going to do. We really don't. But again, Jim had mentioned in the press conference, and I know, Jose, you're talking about that as well with the interview, they really are trying to highlight how well this team has developed young talent. Jesus Bueno is another example of that. You can argue Leon Flock is another example of that. Matt Real, maybe.
Well, I guess I just mentioned Matt Real because Jim has seen that guy from when he was wearing. I think Jim's got underwear older than Matt Real, so yeah, he's seen him come through the program. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Even players like Lessons. He mentioned at the press conference this past Saturday how you bring in Jacob, who really was an unknown across the world, so now he's the top MLS defender every single year in the past 2 years. So again, it is a tip of the hat to their development. But I agree with Eric. If you do not bring in some forward or some striker, you're really not setting yourself apart from the rest of the teams in the Eastern Conference.
Or better yet, honestly, maybe it's telling of what's going to happen within the next few months. If the Union sign or don't sign, you could see it both ways. If they don't sign somebody, they're hoping that Kai stays. If they sign somebody, they're just fully admitting that Kai will just walk away as a free agent. So, it's and preparing for the future too, right? So it's a very interesting time to be a Union fan where things are going well, going into third place into the break, but also a lot of question marks to see out this season.
Agreed. And honestly, if you are going to say if you are going to contend for a cup, though, you have to make some sort of move. Look at just the Riasca move. I think he's hurt now. I don't even think he's relevant anymore for the Union too. I haven't seen him in any shape or form.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen him on a roster sheet or anything as of late.
He was brought on to be one of those players he developed into the next top 3 striker. He was obviously a bigger player too, so Corey Burke-esque. But again, we still have the market still open, so we have time to go with that. Yeah. But Dave, I'll shoot to you.
I think another big move now of the 10 especially would be trying to secure a new contract for Carranza and not these ditzy going like 2 years, with the potential for, a player option at the end of his second year, like a 4 year contract, really lock him up and show the intent of, if you're going to sign Julian Carranza, you're going to be spending big money to actually sign him. Because, I mean, at this point, again, he's a great player. He's going to end up playing in Europe. But I feel like he's literally got less than 5 months left in his contract. I think because of his age, if the team was to sign him, I think they'd have to pay compensation. But you're not going to get the most money possible. I don't know if he's got a year. What's the word? I don't know if he's got like a year sort of option on his deal or not. But I feel like, again, you need to lock this guy up. You can't keep going year on year just offering certain players extensions, because that's how you end up losing players like Carvalho on a free. And realistically, the team should be getting £3 or £4 million, even more from him, £5 million, $5 million, whatever, from a European team or whatever. They're not going to get that. They're going to be losing on arguably the best fullback in the MLS on a free, which is poor business from the Union, especially how they have conducted.
We'll talk fullbacks again, because Valerie mentions Olivier, and obviously Mbaizo having the visa issues with his family is certainly asking for a transfer to get on his way out. Now, I forget who posted on Twitter. I apologize for whoever said it, and I'm quoting you essentially. I saw somebody mention online that Olivier might be the most replaceable starter we have, not including Bedoya. I'm talking about just out of all the other starters, that Olivier would be the most replaceable with Nathan Harriel. I kind of agree with it. I kind of don't. Jose, what do you think about the replaceability of somebody like Olivier?
I think I actually think it's tougher than maybe they're making it out. I would say Leon Flock is our most replaceable starter on the team, to be honest with you, considering how crowded this midfield is getting with the success of the players that we're seeing, at least over the last 2 matches. Yeah. But the fact is, and the fact remains, as Jim told us, this is the Mbaizo situation is not news to him or to the franchise organization. I say franchise, and Dave probably like cringes because that's the most American way to like pitch a soccer team or a football team to anybody. A franchise. But if he wants to go, he wants to go, and it is what it is. I don't blame him for putting family first, and we'll see how it all develops. But I would say it's a 1-2 between, and Dave hates this, Flock and Mbaizo for players that we could easily replace, I think, with the roster that we have now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had to finish out the year at least and say, okay, Olivier is gone, I think Nathan can finish out the job on the right side. Now the problem with MB is if Nathan Harriel goes down with an injury, what do you possibly do on the right? I assume you bring in Bueno. You switch to 3 in the back. You have Lowe, Elliott, and Glesson. So you probably put Bueno on the right as a winger if you want to just kind of have that somebody who can take that role. But I think Nathan's done enough personally in the last few weeks to merit that title of right back. I mean, I'd say defensively he's had some miscues. We saw the one against San Jose in particular, which he just gets kind of caught sleeping a bit there. But I mean, what do you think about Nathan Harriel, Dave? You think he's done enough so far to make you trust him this year? Don't worry about last year, just this year's performances.
I think of course he's still quite a young player, isn't he? But I think again, as you sort of said, the biggest concern is probably the lack of concentration, the focusing issues. Again, there's been a couple of them this year especially, but just on the whole, if the Union were to play 3 at the back, if Harry was to go down, would Jose Martinez be a contender to play right wing back? Considering he does it for Venezuela.
I mean, if you think about, I'll put up Eric's joke real quick. He says after the shutout, he would say Blake is the most replaceable because Bendick is to the rescue. Just bring him Mboli too. But if you think about what we saw with Jose Martinez with his national team, he does play on the right a lot. And Dave, I know you highlighted that one game where he had the assist. I forget to who at this point. It's been so long now.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago. Yeah.
No, it was this year. I remember he fought somebody down the right side of the field, and I can't think of the game right now. But if you put Jose on the right, you could put Bueno and McGlynn together in front of the back 3, and you put Kai on the left and wing back. Is that kind of what you're thinking about, Dave?
I think, because I think Jose, I believe that Venezuela actually play it back. Actually play like with a 5 at the back or 3 at the back formation. I believe that. From what I have seen, I think Jose has played there quite often in that right wing back position. So I think it's certainly something that the Union could perhaps experiment. I think again you got Bueno who could easily slot into that midfield role next to Jack McLean or Leon Flock, whoever else plays there.
I mean, I'd argue that's probably your strong. If you want to talk about just lineup, even with the team right now, in terms of strength of lineup, if you had 3 in the back or 5 in the back, if you want to call that Wagner, Lowe, Elliott, Glesnes, Martinez, with McGlynn and Bueno in front of them. I mean, that's a pretty that's a pretty damn good
Yeah.
back seven players right there. Jose, if you're able to chime in there, Jose, what do you think about that formation there?
I think that's as solid as it gets. I mean, I think we sort of lost track of Damian Lowe. Obviously, he didn't feature
Right.
on Saturday against New York. I think and I could be wrong. Some people were reporting illness. I thought I heard an infection of some sort from Jim at the press conference. Either way, he wasn't 100%. I don't even think he was part of the selection for the bench either. So we sort of lost track of him, especially doing so well with Jamaica. But I mean, I think he's been the standout of the season so far when it comes to the new additions, though the bar's not high. So throwing him in there, gosh, what a strong 7 to have in the back, I think would rival a lot of different teams.
Exactly, and Valerie mentions illness being the reason there. So yes, and Eric, of course, if you guys didn't see the tifo from Jose Martinez over the weekend, Eric says that they keep painting one from him, he'll buy the paint. But Derek's point with Harriel and Olivier, Harriel is more alert defensively, yet cautious in the final third, and not as deceptive as Olivier, which we've seen Olivier break some ankles from time to time, which Nathan just simply cannot do.
I don't know. I might push back a little bit on that. Did we not just watch Harriel fall asleep against Atlanta in one of the goals?
Yeah, well, that's why I mentioned. I think if you have to think about who we've trusted more over the past 2 years defensively, I think it's been Nathan. Although this year he has had a couple of those lapses. I agree with that. I agree with that.
I think actually before, sorry, just quickly discovering, of course, as we sort of said, like that back three with Lowe, one injury to that back three, and well, back to square one. Nate Harriel playing left centre back in a back three, which was one of the most bizarre tactical decisions I think Jim's ever actually made in his time as union manager, which of course head coach, which of course led to that first goal, which where he just was caught out. It was massive. Nate Harriel was massively caught out of position, pushed. I'm not going to pronounce his name, the Greek striker from Atlanta, just completely shoved him in the back. Lucky to not give away a penalty. Lucky to not be sent off as well. But again, the Union lose one centre back, they are in massive trouble. They're back to square one of either relying on Glesnes and Elliott or relying on Lowe and Glesnes, whether they need to bring another centre back in that has MLS experience. I'm not going to say Alvis Powell, but a player of the experience of Alvis Powell, the level of Alvis Powell.
We saw an Alvis Powell jersey at the tailgate, by the way. We saw a Bueno one as well. But we were talking. I think I was talking to was it Kyle or Jose? I forget who I was talking to. I was like, wait, is that an Alvis Powell jersey?
It wasn't me because I noticed it and I actually mentioned it to couples that I brought along to the tailgate, and they're like, "Who's Alvis Powell?" It's like, "Oh, that's right. You enjoy the Union, but you're not like into the Union like we are." And I was as amazed as you were to see a Powell jersey.
No, it was incredible. I think I was talking to Kyle Wood at that point. But go ahead, Dave.
Just a player of that caliber, someone who's played in the MLS over a large amount of his career, someone that knows the league, and if you have to call upon him to play, you can trust him to do a job for 90 minutes. And I think that's probably the sort of player that you need, not just in the back, but I think in attack as well. Because I think they're so light centre backs that if you have a small injury crisis, they are absolutely fucked.
Well, we also saw that when Lowe did go down that one match, we had Kai Wagner come in on the left side as left center back in a way. And then Matt Real played in front of him. I think it was against Montreal at home or Charlotte, one of those two games at home where we saw Matt Real actually have a pretty solid performance. And you had Kai kind of take that left spot, because I agree with you. When I saw that formation, I was like, why is Nathan on the left side? It just didn't make any sense. It seemed forced. And I think Jim alluded to that as well. But again, we're kind of speculating on these depth issues that we have, as I know we kind of have to just be conscious of that with, the market and the window still open for us to bring somebody in. But again, Leagues Cup starts on Saturday. I know we're playing, I think once the game is at 8:00, maybe somebody can mention that, or fact check me on that. But I will try to be at the match against, I think it's Tijuana is our first matchup on Saturday. Dave, will you be able to watch the match, or are you going to be away with your club?
I should be okay to watch it.
You should be okay to watch? Okay, I will hopefully be there. And then we're going to bring up some comments real quick. Eric, bizarre. Someone forgets the 2014-2018 curtain. And Derek says, only as right back for Harriel. Agreed. He's a fish out of water at left back, which is kind of what we saw with Leon Flock at the 6 too. It almost seemed like it was a bit unnatural for him to be there. Do you not agree with that though, Dave? With Nathan, at least?
I think more the worst part was I think Fluck sort of grew into that 6 role. I think it was a weird one with Fluck. I think, of course, he struggled initially, but I think him playing in that 6 was quite an integral part of that Union 10-game unbeaten run towards the end. But looking at Harry, I think, he's probably not a left back, but he's definitely not a left centre back. That was
Yeah.
probably the worst. That was one of the weirdest lineups I've ever seen when he put Liam Fluck playing left wing back and your right back playing at left centre back was a really bizarre choice from Jim.
It just makes you, and everybody's mentioning 8 p.m. For the Leagues Cup. So thank you guys. It just makes you kind of predictable, and we see when the left is so weak, when Matt Real doesn't push forward as aggressively as Kai, and I think we saw it against, I want to say, the Galaxy, one of these recent games where Real just wasn't attacking net and the ball just trickled across the line. There was nobody on the left side. You know that Kai's going to be there, so it makes the Union too predictable. But again, Bedoya is now out. That's going to shift the lineup around. It's going to shift the formation. You know, Jim's not going to go with 3 in the back with Bedoya in there. So in a way, I don't say it as a blessing, but it is a bit fortunate for the Union if they do get back to that old way of playing where they were playing such a high level. Because again, Flock and Martinez did play really well together in the 6s. But anyway, Leagues Cup, 8 p.m. on Saturday. Like I said, I'll try to be there. I believe Jose is going to be there. Eric and I are going to be at 140, which I'm sure will be loud and proud as they always are. Now, expectations, Dave. Do you expect the Union to go far in this tournament? And how much weight are you putting into this tournament, considering it's the first time we're playing it?
I think, of course, because there's now a month break between now and then. I'll be shocked. I'll be disappointed if the Union, don't go for it. I think they really should go for it. Again, I think I know you can sit and go. It's not really that important for competition, but I mean, you've now got a month. It's a bit like the MLS's back cup, really, isn't it? In terms of a one-off tournament in the middle of nowhere. Like, this is a really good opportunity for the Union to try and kick on and build up some momentum ahead of the second half of the season.
Now,
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just looking at the. Just trying to find. Here we go. So they would play. So the Union, presuming the Union win their group, they would play the runners-up of the East 2 League, which has which has Montreal, DC United, and Club Pumas. So again, there isn't the eastern side of the bracket isn't as perhaps strong as other sides. I think you look at some of the other teams. You've got NYC FC, Toronto, the Red Bulls. The Revs are probably the best side in terms of MLS competition. But I think it's certainly a quarter of the competition. I think they'd be disappointed that if they didn't go through. Just looking at Derek's comment he's just put in, I think again, the only team that is stopping the Union from playing practically at home in the entire tournament is LAFC.
It does feel very much CCL-ish in the same way. We kind of talked about this right when we were making that run. The Union did have a fairly easy run to the CCL semifinal, and this feels the same way. Now, the argument here that I want to make is the Union, not even the Union, I'm going to say MLS teams in general, typically struggle in MLS play because of how much time the CONCACAF takes and the CCL takes. And it's historically tracked that they just usually focus less on advancing the standings in the regular season. The Union have already played a long CCL run. They played an Open Cup game. My concern is that they put so much time and effort into the Leagues Cup, they have far less rest than every other MLS team if they go far. And now we're entering this playoff push more tired, possibly more banged up. So I think I agree with Derek. If you advance through the groups, you go for it and you try to win it because it is a CCL spot at the end of the day. It is an opportunity to play significant soccer next year. But part of me knows that the MLS Cup still is a priority this year. Jose, your thoughts?
Well, I think, Mike, that's all about to change sooner rather than later. I think I know I watched, whether you were a sucker like I was or not, that's up to you. But I watched the introduction of Lionel Messi and Sergio Busquets to the league, and even this morning we had Commissioner Garber going on TV saying things that are going to change, including grass fields for all the teams, and I'm thinking to myself, where was this shit like 5-10 years ago, right? How does Atlanta continue to get away with it? How do New England continue to get away with it? It's amazing that they do. So it's interesting to me to see the change that's going to be happening, and I think that will include the way that rosters are made up. As Scooby, I have a dog doing the Scooby-Doo spin out on my floor right now, so I apologize.
I'll take it from here, Jose.
Go ahead.
So the thing about the turf. So you mentioned Atlanta. We know Atlanta Falcons play on that turf, but Dave, I know you're a big Eagles fan, so I'm gonna shoot it to your memory here. There was a game this year where Lane Johnson got clipped below the knee. Do you remember that game? And he mentions, I think, after the press conference, if the Eagles played on turf, he probably would have blown out his knee.
Yeah, I remember the comment. I don't remember the game.
I don't remember the game either, but there was he basically just gets a low, clip block at the air. Go ahead.
Was it the Stingers? It was a home game.
It was a home game because they were playing a link. But to your point, and Jose's point, I know he's muted right now while he's with his dog. I've been wanting grass for both soccer and NFL for years. So if Messi coming to the MLS is what's going to begin this whole process, that's fine with me, because it's a poor product when it's on turf. I hated playing on turf. I mean, it just sucks.
Well, what I was really going to get at, Mike, and that is a very valid point, that the field situation, the playing situation, surface, etc., is that Messi is going to be the catalyst to a lot of changes, and I think that'll have to also be part of, or he'll be the reason why we'll see roster changes. I think we will see that teams will hopefully be able to spend more freely, and I think that's at the heart of the issue, right? You have teams focusing all of their players in one competition, and then when it comes to the MLS, we give up points. And obviously, in the little video that I put together, Jose Martinez mentions just that, right? We focused on the Champions League, and now we are climbing up the league, accumulating points, getting points. So it's obvious that that's the issue, right? You can't play Martinez all of these games. You can try to, but who's the next man up, right? Are you really going to trust Quinn Sullivan and Jack McGlynn? Sure, you can, but they're not at the level of Martinez. We all know that, right? So I think that's where the Messi effect will come in and bring some positive changes to these really antiquated, everybody level field type of situation that the MLS is in. Though in reality, there's no reason to have a level field, since nobody really is losing anything. There's no promotion, there's no relegation. So let the owners spend if they have it, right? So I just wanted to share that as we're talking about, historically the MLS teams sort of falling behind or having to focus on different competitions. It's just really fascinating to see hopefully see what's going to happen in the next obviously 2 years, but I think it happens far faster than that, since Messi's here only for that allotted time.
Well, I know Jim has always mentioned just international duty alone, not playing through those breaks when you're having these, for the unions, having 4 or 5 players out, it lessens the product. It's like going to an NBA game,
man,
expecting to see Kawhi Leonard and he's benched for load management. It's the same concept. You want to pay.
Yeah, imagine going to see Inter Miami and Messi's not there because he's got the CONMEBOL tournament happening, and he wants to go to Copa America. Are you really gonna say to Messi, no, you can't go represent Argentina? You really gonna say that to him?
That's what I mean. But then you could imagine. But then you've seen the outrage. But you can imagine the outrage of clubs in Europe who are like, "Yeah, sorry, you're not going to go and play for America. You can't play for America." I mean, I think again, the MLS is the only major sort of like league which plays on during international breaks, which, as you sort of said, is a bizarre sort of thing. Like, again, just with it dampens the product. There are so many players that go. Not just just the union. We see so often you'll see 6 or 7 changes from both teams in the game. It's just not the best players available. And again, I mean, perhaps if Apple TV might have an influence in what gets done, if they can end up saying, "Look, we want international breaks. We want, we want the best available products." I mean, like the Philadelphia Union, they haven't got their star player and Andre Blake playing.
No, go ahead, Dave. Finish up.
Do you know what I mean? Like the Union haven't got their star player and Andre Blake playing. And you look at other teams. I'm just trying to think of exactly who else. No, Atlanta United, like Thiago Almada's on international duty and such. But we want these players to have their best players sitting there available. the league needs to do something, and hopefully, perhaps Apple can make an influence. It would be a step in the right direction, because then you'll see less injuries as well. There'll be more breaks. Teams will have more
Yeah.
breaks, and as I say, sorry, allow more teams, the teams that are in the CONCACAF Champions League or Champions Cup, whatever it's going to be called, to have more breaks. It will then allow teams to be able to go more full on in both competitions, and that's what the most important thing is. Again, it also hurts the competition. It also hurts the level of competition in the product when you see these teams like the Union, LAFC, and whoever else, being like, Joe, screw it, we're going to make 11 changes this weekend because we've got the CONCACAF Champions League coming up, and we haven't got, although all our players are on international duty in 2 weeks, we don't have a break now until a week between now and the League's Cup, for the League's Cup in July. So it's sort of like...
And also from a traveling standpoint, I mean, how many times have we talked about how hard it is to travel in this country? If you're already having tired legs already, and now you have to go all the way to San Jose to play a game the week, it's just a lot on your body. I mean, but Jose, I know you have a point to make. I'll shoot
Yeah, I was gonna echo David's point. Where like, hey, listen, you don't have to look any further than what has happened to FC Cincinnati over the last 3-4 weeks, maybe 5 weeks, right? Vasquez and some other players who are away with the national team, their national teams, I should say, and look at the record the last couple of weeks, right? And we knew that they weren't going to play as well as they have for the entire season. It would have been something incredible to witness, and I think we would have been all for it in a way. But losing to DC, tying New England, tying Charlotte, barely skating by against New York, losing to Nashville despite Nashville having a red card. Just a lot of really interesting results that I think completely coincide with an international window happening at the same time. So it's everybody's experiencing it, but I think the Messi effect will really help change that. Where, yeah, imagine the league saying to Messi, "No, you can't go to represent Argentina." Like that's just a joke. That's just absolutely not going to happen.
Agreed. And also, you'll see teams that are just not going to play the Leagues Cup seriously. Like we've seen Open Cup. I mean, we saw with the Open Cup last year, the Union didn't take it seriously. They came back from LA, they earned that point, and they put out Stuart Finley and the B squad out there. Granted, Stuart Finley scored, but that's besides the point. I mean, you just don't have to. So how many teams? Let's say a bottom feeder team like, I can't think of any right now. Think of a bad team in the East. Miami, for example, right? Miami's going to go all out for the Leagues Cup.
New York City.
New York City, they're going to go all out. But the teams at the higher level are going to say, hey, listen, we are in the playoff. We're going to make the playoffs. We are, for LAFC, they had the good, strong CCL run. Let's take a couple weeks off. Let's heal up our players. But again, it goes with product. Before you make your last point, Dave, I'm just going to put up these comments real fast, if you don't mind. Here we go. We're going to go with Valerie. While we're at an institute relegation promotion, I'll get to that in a second, Valerie. Eric said, I don't think the money in this area has been mined well, Eric. We have, Miss Smith Line, Campbell Soup, Atena, and many more to push the envelope. And then Eric says NYCFC. But to Valerie's point, that relegation and promotion. Dave, I know obviously being from England, you see it all the time. They have flirted the idea of the USL possibly bringing that on. So I'm going to let you have your point that you wanted to make, and then kind of if you want to discuss the pro-rel situation.
But again, it's just a system that it gives teams consequences for being terrible, really, or it gives teams it gives teams an incentive not to play badly. I think again you sort of see Inter Miami this year. I'm not gonna say they've tanked, but they've just they've sat on being like, oh yeah, we know we're bad, but we're going to get Messi, we're going to get Busquets, we're going to get Jordi Alba. So if we're bad, so what? We can just chuck all our best players. We can just chuck all our best players. We can bring them in, and we can just go all out for the Leagues Cup. And having that consequence with Inter Miami being last, I think the overall MLS, at this point in the season, halfway through the season, these are the sort of signings they'd be making to get out of trouble to survive relegation, not just so they can go all out and try and win some, no disrespect, some money grabbing cup in the middle of the summer to, just to keep teams playing more games. Like it's just I think you sort of see it adds more of an incentive, and it makes it. And of course, I know I've seen the argument of teams will go bankrupt and it'll hurt impact teams. But at the end of the day, the system in America is never going to change. Teams are going to continue to get away with being terrible for multiple years. And then we've seen teams for the last couple of years be so uncompetitive in the way that it just is going to change. Of course, like that somewhat is the American way. If you're terrible, just screw it with first 15 games of the season. You've been terrible. Just screw it. We'll chuck the season in the bin and go again next season, and we'll tank for the first.
Listen, trust the process, baby.
Draft,
Sixers did that the best.
Cares?
Trust the process. Trust the process.
Yeah, but it's an insult to your it's an insult to your paying fans, whether it's fans that have season tickets, fans that go week in and week out, fans that have paid for the Apple TV subscription to watch the team every week. Do you know what I mean? It's an insult to them when teams are like Toronto, like again, they've not had the best of seasons as well, but sort of teams are going out there towards the end of the season. Just screw it. If we lose this week. Who cares?
Eric mentions, but what leagues have truly benefited from pro rail? Survival doesn't do much. The good teams just get better while the gap widens towards the bottom. He wants parity, which is a good point. Also, the NFL has parity. I mean, NFL could be a bottom feeder one year, the next year you're winning the Super Bowl. Yeah. So there is. I agree with Eric's point. I know the USL. I was talking to somebody. I think I was talking to Evan on Saturday. How there is so many teams in the USL. They could split it up into maybe 15, 15, and 15, have the 3 divisions. And if it really works and really kicks off, MLS is going to want to join to get in on the action. So, yeah. This is just simply they're introducing it. It's so far away from happening.
Well, the one thing to not forget, too, and I think if you follow front office sports, which is the way that I sort of learned about this quick bit that Don Garber put out, he is not opposed to sovereign wealth joining the league. So when you start thinking about potential roster regulations, we'll call it, and roster rules being part of the equation that brings the parity of the teams, forget it if you get a Saudi Arabia wealth fund coming in and investing heavily in one team. So imagine and I say this as a fan of the team, but imagine a Manchester City level of investment into an MLS team. Imagine a Newcastle level of investment into an MLS team. I don't think it would be as drastic, but it would just put teams in situations where it's men amongst boys, just really being out there. And ultimately, as we've seen over the last few weeks, and I think a lot of people disappointed, a lot of people honestly just not thinking about themselves in a way, or putting themselves in the situations that some of these players are in. And it's hard to, right, when you're trying to put yourself in the shoes of a millionaire, but a lot of players taking the money and going to Saudi Arabia. So just really, really interesting time that we're in. And it's been sort of written on the wall for a long time with the plan that Saudi Arabia has to diversify their funds or diversify their business dealings away from oil, obviously, as solar and alternative energies come to be. So, and I could go for another 40 minutes about that. It's something I'm really interested and passionate about, but just wanted to sort of share, if you didn't hear, Don Garber really interested and open to letting China, Saudi Arabia, etc., sovereign wealth coming in, changing the game in the U.S. So keep an eye out for that.
I mean, it's a lot to come. I mean, you never thought Messi would be here, and now he's here. So, I mean, if at this point, anything's on the table. Yeah. But Dave, go ahead.
Just again, relegate just adds responsibility as well. I mean, again, as I sort of said, it also creates cool stories. Like in England, Luton, who were what?
Yeah,
5-6 years ago, were playing in the non-league, obviously the league that Wrexham were in. In the last 5-6 years, they've literally climbed the leagues and they've managed to get to the Premier League, which was unheard of somewhat story. And you sort of think again, teams like Leicester, I know you sort of say it just creates a gap. I know Leicester got relegated last year, but Leicester won the Premier League out of nowhere, and it just creates this sort. It allows teams to reset. And it just, again, do you not get bored playing the same teams every single season? Do you not get boring? Just thinking that. Do you know what I mean? You don't get the excitement of looking at the fixtures and going, "Oh, the new team's Luton away. When are we going to play Luton away? When are we going to go to this really cool stadium?" You don't get that in the NFL or in the MLS. It's sort of, again, it's when do we have to travel out west to play? LAFC again. When do we have to go? When do we have to go to that baseball stadium in NYCFC? Again, it would create consequences. It would perhaps diversify the league as well, and it would add more stakes. It would make the league more interesting, as opposed to 10 team over half the league making the playoffs, and just somewhat being
that's
just a pat on the back and giving a sticker because you can come 10th and win a 10-legged tie against 7th place to get into the actual playoffs. It doesn't.
Well,
ridiculous.
That's a problem with the NBA. I think I know we're talking about different leagues, different sports, all stuff. But I think the problem with the NBA for so many years recently was how predictable it was. You knew the Warriors were going to make it. You knew the Cavs were going to make it with LeBron James, or Miami was going to make it. It just makes it too predictable, which is why I love college basketball so much because it is far more unpredictable.
Here we go.
I know.
Here we go.
But the thing is, though, it puts teams like the Sixers back in the early, mid 2000s into the predicament. They said, well, we've been mediocre since 2002. What do we do to get back to being relevant? Because the draft process for the NBA it's so skewed. If you don't pick top 14, top 13 in the draft, you're just simply not going to get a reliable player. Go ahead, Jose, if you want to read the comment from Eric.
Yeah, Eric mentions, but maybe this is countering some of Dave's commenting. And Eric mentions, but those stories are far and few in between. Who wins the majority of the time? If I have to watch LAFC and Inter Miami, etc., win over and over, I'll just live underneath the bridge and forget about MLS.
The thing is, I think again, but if you create this promotion relegation system, it doesn't just then become about the top league. It will grow the game in America where teams can actually go watch their local teams, and actually go watch them play competitive games, and actually see them getting promoted to a higher league, like as Derek's comment there, Blackpool, who have very much been like a League One Championship team throughout the last 20 years, got to the Premier League out of nowhere. I think it was in the 2010-11 season.
Mm-hmm.
It just, do you know what I mean? Like my team, Gillingham, we're hoping to get promoted this year. It'd be amazing. It'd be a great experience for supporters. It also gives these smaller teams an opportunity to win a trophy as opposed to sitting there, win a league title. I can say that my team's won a league title before Tottenham Hotspur and Arsenal have in the last. Do you know what I mean? We won League 2 in 2013. We've won a league title. I can say.
Now you're taking the piss. You're taking the piss out of us now.
I've seen my team win a league title. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's an incredible experience. You get, in the playoffs as well. Obviously, we have a different style of playoffs, promotion playoffs. You get to go to Wembley, the big national stadium, massive day out. One of the best days of my life. Seeing my team score in the last minute to get promoted. Like, it's an incredible. Like, it isn't just set for the top division. The team goes into the top division. It's all over this. Everyone in America loves the fact Wrexham won the league and they got promoted last year. But if that happened in America, this team who had got the investment from Ryan Reynolds, they'd have to lodge a 20-year application to try and get the MLS, all these business plans, and then after 10 years they'd finally be granted access, having built their stadium and everything, as opposed to this fairy tale story.
That's probably where the USL's the perfect spot for it, right? A lot of those teams have been established for, I don't want to say, maybe I'm wrong, I haven't been in the country as long as obviously the length of life of some of these teams in terms of when they've been established, but you have the San Antonios of the world, you have a lot of really good teams with a lot of history that maybe the USL's best suited for, and the MLS just has to remain the way it is, unfortunately. And I think it just really comes down to the dollars and cents and the almighty dollar speaking. So I can totally see it both ways, Dave. I mean, I can't tell you how many years I've spent watching the most expensive game in the world being the playoffs to make it to the Premier League, and also watching that relegation battle over watching Manchester City the last couple of games of the season, just because I'm so intrigued onto the storylines that come out of that. So I can see it both ways, Dave.
That's what I mean. I think as well, like, that is perhaps another reason why the game doesn't grow in America, is because these teams, these local fans don't have a team that they can really follow and they can support every week. You know what I mean? Like, I think you see some teams like, if you live in California, I mean, your most local team's LA, you live in San Diego, you live in Oakland, you live wherever, like, who's your team going to be? You're not going to travel.
Look at North Dakota, South Dakota. Who do they follow? The Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it's not even the same state. You got to drive 1,000 miles just to see your favorite team play.
That's me. Go watch Minnesota United, and it's sort of like, again, even in PA, like, of course, I think it's at the Pitts. I don't know what their second name was, but the Pittsburgh.
The
Riverhounds.
Riverhounds. Valerie loves the Riverhounds.
I think they're good. I think they've proven to be a solid team over the last few years in the Open Cup. I think they've been quite a solid team in the USL as well. Like, it just gives other teams opportunities, and it would create consequences, as opposed to, Inter Miami essentially deliberately tanking the season and saying, screw it, we're going to get Messi in July. Who cares what happens in the first half of the season? Nothing's going to happen to us anyway. Like, it just would create more consequences. As you sort of said, Jose, it would create more consequences. It would create more. It was, in the final few games of the season, like it would create more hype. You probably would get more viewers. Teams would watch different games. You know what I mean? Like as opposed to watching the Union play a deadbeat 0-0 draw as they've got the third place, the third seed in the playoffs, locked up in Eastern Conference against what's it called?
Even just from imagine if, let's just say hypothetically, the NFL had this, right? Can you imagine the Eagles sending the Cowboys into relegation? I mean, just think of how much fun that would be from that. So I listen, I get both sides of it. I think we could talk about this all night, but we obviously cannot. I may read this starting at 10 o'clock. Holy crap, guys. San Diego Wave, NSL and NWSL to follow again right there. Thank you, Jim Liner. And then Derek, I'm not mad at you, Valerie, as I was born in Pittsburgh. There you go. A lot of love in the comments. I love this. So anyway, let's wrap up the show. Let's do the sponsors, and then we'll call it a night because it's 10 o'clock. I got to work, guys. I got stuff to do. Check out Statement Games at statementgames.com for a funny way to fantasy sports entertainment. You win gift cards and prizes. Free to sign up at statementgames.com. You have Doan Distillery at the Trolley Barn Public Market in Quakertown. Go to doandistillery.com to check out their wide variety of drinks and spirits. You have Vinny's Pizza and Restaurant in Allentown, PA. Discover a new favorite by trying their top pizzas and so much more. Check out their new website at vinnyspizzarestaurant.com. Stuff the Grills at 6750 Iroquois Trail number 5 in Allentown, PA, right next to Vinny's, or at stuffthegrills.com. They have homemade hot and cold sandwiches, salads, appetizers, baked goods available for any event. I know, Dave, you're hosting a Leagues Cup watch party, so when you go order from Stuff the Grills. They deliver to England, DoorDash across the ocean. Then we got Across the Pitch gear and all the AAT Sports Network gear at aatsportsnetwork.com/shop. And Jose, this is my reminder. I have to text Margot from margueritestudio.com or Marguerite Studio on IG. She does some great work. Recently married. Congratulations, Margot. We are looking forward to having you back with us again. And that is the comment section read. And then we're going to talk about, Derek says, I think they're the oldest club in the U.S., Pittsburgh. So look, we have a lot to look forward to, a lot to discuss. I appreciate us going on this old non-union tangent. It's nice to talk about it. Nice to get out there. Dave, final thought before we wrap the show up.
Pro relegation, pro promotion. No
there
joking.
We go.
I think again, it's about to be an interesting it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, especially I think seeing how this competition gets on. I'm not too sure if they've made the Miami game prime time so everyone can see Messi play. Is it prime time? I don't.
I'm sure it will be.
It is.
His
practices are live, I think, starting tomorrow. You can watch them on Apple TV if you want to watch Messi run around with the kids that they have in that roster.
You can watch him. You can watch him shop as well via Twitter.
Publix.
Publix. Yeah. I don't know. I think I was hearing, is it like Sunday, like 8:30? I don't know, whatever. But it's gonna be interesting to see somewhat, how this goes, especially with the games being hosted in the US. The teams don't have to worry about traveling to Mexico to play in different climates, different environments. And I'm not too sure if this is going to change. It's going to be like a yearly thing where next season they'll go play in Mexico, whatever. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this Leagues Cup pans out. I mean, as I sort of just alluded to beforehand, it does somewhat feel a bit like the MLS's back cup, in the sense that it's like it's going to be games on every single day, and so fingers crossed there's going to be a lot of games that should hopefully be a very interesting competition with hopefully a few shocks and surprises, and hopefully the Union can somewhat march towards the final.
And Jim mentions, will he play on turf fields? God, for his legs, I hope he doesn't. And Valerie says, I'm disappointed that my 2-night class reunion this weekend interferes with my messy gazing and seeing the Union play on Saturday. So I'm sorry to hear that, Valerie. But go ahead, Jose, your final thought there.
As Dave mentioned, excited to see how the experiment goes in terms of the Leagues Cup. Obviously, Apple needed content to put content, and this is part of the agreement. And it seems like other leagues are following suit, with the NBA having just also agreed to do a mid-season tournament. So,
don't get me started on that. We'll talk about that next week.
It's a trend. So excited to be there. I hope to be there on Saturday. Hopefully, my household is back to 100%. It seems, like I said, my wife's situation's getting better very, very quickly. Obviously, I will be as safe as I can getting to the stadium, in terms of, if there's any chance that I could get someone sick. I obviously won't be there. But again, just I don't know. I'm still in awe with the support for that little video that we put together for AAT Sports. It was well received, and I hope I'm thinking about doing some more stuff like that. So I hope that if you enjoyed it, you yeah, and I will be shirtless in 140. Eric is my witness. I was there through and through. So excited if we're able to be there on Saturday. I know Mike and I both submitted for credentials. If we're able to be there, come and say hello. I like to think I'll be there for the tailgate, the pregame. I'm not sure about Mike, but come and say hello. It's always been really, really nice to get to meet a lot of the people who often just show up as text on our screens.
Yes, so please, absolutely. So my final thought would be, agreed, I will try to be there Saturday, at least for the tailgate. I'm going to a little friend's barbecue beforehand, so hopefully I have enough time to shoot down the Chester, rather. Yeah, the whole NBA college basketball mid-season tournaments, I think is something to discuss in the next show when I can go on a little tangent there. But overall, my final thoughts, again, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. A lot of comments today. I was very busy. You kept me all busy, so I appreciate that. But listen, the Union have a lot of to look forward to. I really want to see players in the youth, maybe even Odada. I would love to see Odada get some minutes in Leagues Cup, maybe against Tijuana. So let's wrap up the show there. Again, thank you everybody for commenting. Go Union. Have a great night, everybody.
Dupe.